Hello everyone, I'm Alex Dykes, and as promised, this is a 2014 BMW X5. Now this particular model is a BMW X5 xDrive 35i. You can see that right down there on that front quarter panel. Now that's the way that BMW is identifying the engine as well as which wheels are doing the driving in the car. Before we go too much further, let's talk about competition because it's important that we frame this discussion properly. This new X5 is very large, and it slots in between the Mercedes-Benz ML and the Mercedes-Benz GL in terms of size. So even though the Mercedes-Benz ML is also a 5 or 7 seat crossover SUV type vehicle, it's a little bit smaller than this X5. This is also a little bit smaller than the Audi Q7. That Audi Q7 is very, very large, but it is almost exactly the same size as the brand new Range Rover Sport. There is also that full-size Infiniti SUV, the QX80, but the QX80 doesn't necessarily compete directly with the X5. I think it's really more of a Mercedes-Benz GL competitor because it's a true body-on-frame, full-on rugged type SUV, and the X5, truthfully, is more of a crossover type SUV than anything else. There seems to be a lot of discussion and debate around whether or not the BMW X5 is an SUV or whether it's a crossover. Honestly, the lines are very blurry these days, and I would call the BMW X5 a crossover in the same way that I think a Durango and a Grand Cherokee and the Mercedes-Benz ML are also crossovers. The reason for that is we have a unibody chassis, so this is not a body-on-frame, truck-based kind of SUV. It shares an awful lot of components as well as feature sets with BMW's regular sedan products, but we also have a very robust all-wheel drive setup, and we have a little bit more ground clearance than you'll find in a sedan. We only have about 8.2 inches of ground clearance in this BMW X5, so it's really not SUV-like ground clearance, and you definitely find more ground clearance in that large full-size Infiniti or in the Mercedes-Benz GL. They're quite a bit higher off the road. You'll also find a decent amount more ground clearance in the Range Rover Sport, also available with an optional air suspension so you can lift it up quite a bit higher. So the BMW X5 really is a crossover vehicle because it's designed for on-road use with a little bit of extra suspension height if you plan to go down a gravel road or you just want to feel that extra comfort of being up a little bit higher. There are 4 different front-end treatments going on for the 2014 X5. Things start out with a base model, and that gets a sort of blacked out grille, and it looks an awful lot less aggressive than the one you're taking a look at right now. There's also a luxury trim that gives you more chrome, a tweaked lower grille, and you also get a few other goodies and added benefits in that luxury model, mostly more chrome. The luxury line adds $1,700 to the price of your X5. We then have the X line, which adds $2,600, and that gives you a different grille. We have yet again more tweaks going on the front grille, more tweaks going on the lower grille. We get a little bit more chrome, and we also get sort of a silver bumper chin right down here at the bottom of the front bumper cover. The M Sport is the most expensive trim, and it's $4,600, and it gives you this more aggressive looking front end. Our model has the HID headlamps. LED headlamps are available as an option in the X5 this year, and they're $1,900 extra. Well, it may look very similar to the outgoing X5. If you look closely, we have a much bolder and much larger kidney grille right here, and the kidney grille is no longer thoroughly separated from the headlamp module, so you can see it blends right in here with the headlamp module. From the side profile, the family resemblance is very obvious. We have this incredibly long hood up front because this is a rear-wheel drive biased vehicle with an inline-6 engine under the hood. Inline-6 engines are quite long, so you do have to have a very long hood in order for them to fit, and that results in a very attractive side profile. Behind this door, you'll find 2 rows of seats. So we have the 5-seat version that we're testing right here, but there is also a 7-seat available that gives you a 3rd row right back here behind these windows. Like most 3-row SUVs, you'll find a relatively vertical rear hatch as well as a relatively square back end. That's so you can get a little bit more headroom back there for the 3rd row, but it also results in decent cargo practicality in the 5-row version like we're taking a look at right here. The styling on the back end of the X5 is relatively simple, but I also find it quite attractive. We have these dual chrome exhaust tips and R3-liter model right here, and from this angle you can really tell how wide the rear tires are. These are 315 with 19-inch wheels. Our particular X5 has the optional $1,500 rear air suspension that helps load level on the rear axle. So this is not a dynamic suspension, although dynamic suspension is available on the X5 as well. This is a load leveling suspension, so the more weight you toss into the back of the X5, it'll pump it right up to a normal ride height. That helps keep the suspension in the middle of its travel for better handling and better load capacity as well. Now this air suspension is standard if you opt for the 7-passenger version of the X5. It's definitely one that I would recommend getting anyway, especially if you plan on towing with your X5. The X5 has a relatively healthy towing capacity, and getting that rear air suspension just helps you be a little bit more safe out there on the road, especially if you tend to overload your tongue weight by a little bit. One thing you won't notice is right here on the door. We don't have keyless entry in the base X5 or even an R model, which has a decent number of options. Even though we have this very attractive M-themed remote control for the car, we don't have keyless entry right into the car, so you do have to unlock it on this remote. If you do want keyless entry, it's part of a $2,700 option package that also includes Dakota leather seats, soft close front doors, and satellite radio. There are 3 different engines available in the X5 for 2014. Our particular model has the 3-liter twin scroll turbo inline 6 engine. This produces 300 horsepower and 300 pound-feet of torque. This is mated to an 8-speed automatic transmission, and you can either get rear-wheel drive by default or all-wheel drive for some extra cash as well. We then get a 3-liter twin-turbo diesel inline 6 engine. This one is a true twin-turbo engine, produces 255 horsepower and 413 pound-feet of torque. That particular engine is mated only to that 8-speed automatic transmission, and it's available only with all-wheel drive. The top-of-the-line xDrive 50i model uses a 4.4-liter twin-turbo V8 engine, and it's been slightly tweaked for 2014, and it now produces 445 horsepower and an incredible 480 pound-feet of torque from just 2,000 RPM. Again, that's mated only to an 8-speed automatic transmission, and it's available only with all-wheel drive. Fuel economy ranges from 14 miles per gallon in the city, 22 on the highway in that V8 all-wheel drive model, to a very lofty 23 miles per gallon city, 31 on the highway with the all-wheel drive diesel model. Our particular model here is the gasoline 3-liter inline 6, and it kind of splits the difference at 18 miles per gallon city and 27 on the highway. Front seat comfort in the X5 is absolutely excellent. It ranges from an 8 out of 10 for a base model X5 up to 10 out of 10 if you get all the seat options. BMW does provide a wide variety of different seat options in the X5. There's the base seat, which we're not taking a look at here, and then there's this multi-contour seat, which I also call the million-way adjustable seat. I think it's 20 or 24 different ways. A lot of different ways you can adjust this seat. We have 4-way adjustable lumbar support. We have inflating and deflating side bolsters in the seat. You can change the articulation of the seat backs. Not only can you change the way the seat back is tilting forward and backward, but you can also change the way the seat back curves, sort of like that. So you can make this top part of the seat curve in. We have 4-way adjustable butterfly headrests, and those go up and down, and they also butterfly in and out on the sides as well. We have an extending thigh cushion, and the whole thing is 2-position memory linked. The 2-position seat memory also links to the tilt telescopic steering wheel, which is optionally heated as in our model right here. If that wasn't enough, the passenger seat also has the same range of motion as the driver's seat, including that 2-position memory. You can get all the seats coated in nappa leather, which is very soft, and you can also get the anti-fatigue seat option in the front seats. That anti-fatigue option has air bladders in the bottom of the seat cushion, and it uses them to sort of improve blood circulation in your legs. It inflates and deflates the bolsters at different rates to help improve that blood circulation down there. Much like the front, the rear seats are kind of a range in terms of comfort. It ranges from about 7 to maybe 9 depending on the option boxes you check. Since ours is the regular old back seat that's just heated, these seats don't recline and they're not quite as softly padded as the top level seats in the X5. Headroom is extraordinarily generous. I'm 6 feet tall and I have about 2 inches of headroom left right over here on this side. This front seat is all the way back in its track, and I still have about 4 inches of legroom left here or so. We aren't in the 7-passenger X5, so we can't test out that 3rd row seat, but the 3rd row seat in the X5 is fairly compact, so do keep that in mind. It's not really suited to taller people, even though we have a relatively large amount of headroom back here, including the 3rd row. It's really reserved for children or smaller people in the back. Because the X5 is relatively high off the ground, we don't have much of a driveline hump for the center passenger. I still have about 2 inches of headroom, even though we're in the sunroof-equipped model, which does reduce the headroom on the inside. The X5 has long had a reputation for practicality, and that continues with a split 40-20-40 folding seat back. This 20 portion in the center folds independently of the outside. However, you can't leave it up. It does fold down with this outside seat. As you'd expect with a luxury car, there are several different upholstery styles and patterns available in the X5. I think the lighter colors are my favorite from the BMW palette. The front door panels are an attractive mixture of soft touch plastics and optional wood or aluminum trim. Our particular model has the aluminum trim in it. Let's zoom into some detail over here on the passenger side. We do have a lock and unlock button now on the driver and the front passenger door. I realize that sounds like a strange thing to comment on, but BMW models in the past have had a very centrally located lock and unlock button that was a little bit harder for passengers to find. Over here on the dashboard we have very convenient split air vents, and we have one air vent that can point up to the top and one air vent that can be directed down towards the bottom. They can be directed to different sides as well. It makes it a lot easier to get air going the way you want to. That's both for the driver and the front passenger. As you'd expect from a vehicle with a price tag like the X5, we have soft touch plastics lower in the dashboard as well as up in the dashboard right up here as well. There is the option of an available stitched leather dashboard if you're willing to pay enough, and you can choose from a wide selection of different veneers as well as this aluminum trim that's in our model right here. The X5 has a very generously sized glove box, and again, the glove box cover is soft touch plastic as well. You'll find the iDrive screen mounted very high on the dashboard, and it's mounted sort of like a tablet computer grafted onto the dashboard. This is something that a lot of manufacturers have started to do lately. I think I like the design because it helps keep the dashboard from looking so bulky. Below that, you'll find two large air vents, and BMW continues their tradition of having a little knob right here so you can choose how warm you want the air coming out of that vent to be. You can choose cold or you can choose warmer, and the driver and the front passenger have their own individual knobs. Our model has dual zone climate control, but a 4-zone system is available in the X5. The important thing to know about this system is that it is based off the more expensive BMW models, which means we have two separate blowers in the car. We can unsync the left and the right sides from one another, and then we can actually cause more air to blow out of the passenger side and less out of the driver's side. You can control this manually, as you can see here. You can also have the driver's side on manual and the passenger side on auto. It gives you a wide variety of selectability that you don't find in other systems on the market. Below the radio preset buttons, we have a large sliding cover which opens to reveal your ashtray, cigarette lighter, as well as two large cup holders. These are easily able to accommodate the largest takeout sodas we were able to throw at it, which is fairly unusual in the European category. Moving further back, we have our large iDrive controller. This now has handwriting recognition, so you can write letters right on the surface of this iDrive controller for address entry. BMW continues to use an attractive joystick-like gear shift device. We have park as a button right up there at top. If we want to use the other gears, we have to use this gear selector button right here on the side. So we push that button and we pull the control back, and now we're in drive. You can go to neutral without doing anything else, and you can pull back to drive without doing anything else. But if you want reverse, if we push it all the way forward, you notice we didn't get reverse. So if we press this button on the side and then push it forward, now you'll notice we're in reverse. Same thing if we want to go back to drive, the button has to be pressed down. Manual and sport mode can be selected by pushing the selector to the side and then toggling forward and backward. To the left of the shifter, you'll find your traction and stability control disable button. Our model has the adaptive suspension system, which is optional on the X5. We have several different suspension modes to select from, between Sport Plus, Sport, Comfort, and Eco Pro, all the way on the softer end of the scale. It's our parking sensor enable disable button, hill descent control over here, our electric parking brake, and we have auto brake hold, which uses the electric parking brake to hold the car in position with the brake lights activated at a stoplight, so you don't have to keep your foot on that brake pedal. The X5 continues to use a split lid for its center console storage compartment. So you open each side independently of one another. In here you'll find the phone dock cradle. We can lift that up out of the way by pressing the button on the front. You can buy docks for various phones, iPhones included. Inside the center console, you'll find a smallish storage area. So you'll find a decent amount more storage in something like an Acura MDX than in this model. This is also where you'll find the auxiliary input and the USB input for the iDrive system. BMW continues to use a very classic and very simple white on black instrument cluster layout with 4 dials, and at night the dials turn orange. Below and integrated into the tachometer is the multi-information display on the X5, so you can change the trip computer right over there. And if we change this to our Eco Pro mode, you'll notice that the bottom portion of that tachometer is actually part of the display itself. It does change based on the mode that you're in. Because we have the optional M Sport package, we also have the M Sport steering wheel. It is a 3-spoke wheel with the M logo right there on the bottom. It's a very attractive wheel design. Over here we have our radio controls on this side, voice command button, phone hang up button, volume up, down, and mode button right there. Cruise control buttons over on this side. If you had the optional adaptive cruise control, you'd have some additional buttons right over here. We have these large, attractive shift paddles on the back of the steering wheel. I have to say, however, that I think I would buy the X5 with the regular steering wheel because this steering column right here is larger than this center circular airbag. It also isn't circular, so if I look behind there, you can see quite a bit of steering column even from the driver's perspective. So I think that overall I like the steering wheel, but I think that the original steering wheel, the regular one in the X5, just looks a little bit more attractive from the driver's perspective in the car. This is a great steering wheel, however, to hold. It's always a little bit tricky to video cabin accent lighting, but let's give it a whirl. We have this blue strip running right across the top of the door and the top of the dashboard. That can be changed between blue, orange, and white. Now right here below the aluminum trim in our car, we have an additional strip of LEDs. If you had the wood trim in the car, you'd have those same LED strips right down there. Here's the door handle over here for reference. For 2014, BMW has retained a relatively unique feature about the X5 as well as the XC90, and that's this mid-gate right here in the back. Think of it sort of as a pickup truck tailgate on an SUV. You can open this separately from this regular old tailgate in the car, and you can use it to sit on things, pull cargo out, pull cargo in, etc. I find it a very handy feature. It's relatively easy to open and close. We have this little lever here, opens and closes relatively easily, as you can see. We also have a power tailgate hatch on the upper tailgate. Now, one of the things that I really like about this mid-gate, although BMW as well as Volvo and everybody else that has one tells you never to do this, you can stick long cargo in the vehicle, and then you can close the upper tailgate, and then you can have that long cargo sticking out of the vehicle. It really makes it a lot easier to carry long boards or long lumber, etc. Now, you can't fit a 4x8 sheet of plywood right here, but you can fit a wide variety of other things from your home improvement store. Now again, BMW and Volvo and everybody else that uses a mid-gate tells you not to do it that way, but everybody that I know that owns a BMW X5 thinks this is the best thing since sliced bread because that's exactly what they do with it. The X5 scores 10 out of 10 points in my exclusive Trunk Comfort Index. This is a very large cargo area back here. We can store 23 cubic feet of whatever behind the second row seats. It expands to 66 cubic feet if you fold those seats down, and that's even before we take into account the extra storage right here under the cargo load floor. Now, if you want to pay $150 extra, you can get a spare tire to go in that cargo area right there under the load floor. However, if you opt for the 7-passenger version of the X5, then you do lose that additional storage and you can't put a spare tire under there. The X5 also has a wide variety of practical cargo carrying features. We have these cargo tie downs that slide on an aluminum rail on the floor. We also have grocery bag and shopping bag holders that flip down from the sides. We have cargo tie downs right here on the wall as well. Again, we have that standard tonneau cover. We have some additional storage right behind this door, a little elastic net right over there to help hide some of your small goodies. And then over here on the right side, we have an additional storage well right on that side of the trunk. It's very nicely featured back here in the cargo area as well. And we have a power lift gate with a button that's somewhere around here. The suspension is a little bit softer this year than last year, and this one doesn't seem to get upset over really rough roads and deep potholes like the last generation X5 did. Now, this wasn't a complete clean sheet redesign for the X5. Instead, BMW really just sort of massaged the last generation's platform to correct things that customers had complained about. This particular X5 has the dynamic suspension system in it, so right now we're in the softest mode. I'm going to go on up to the hardest suspension mode for some of these potholes so we can tell the difference. On this particular mode, the suspension is now as firm as it can possibly get, and it is still relatively firm for this luxury segment. It is definitely firmer than the standard suspension in the Mercedes-Benz ML or in the Audi Q7, but it's not unreasonably firm. Of course, BMW is still giving us something for the BMW X5M to bump things up to, but overall this is a fairly firm and fairly sporting ride as far as SUVs and crossovers go. Out on my favorite winding road, I noticed one thing right away. This hood is incredibly long, and that camera that I have mounted on the hood is really a long way away. Aside from that, I want to start by reminding you that there's a difference between handling ability and handling feel, and it's really obvious if you're trying to compare something like this BMW X5 to the Acura MDX. The Acura MDX has a very good feel with the super handling all-wheel drive package, whereas the BMW X5 doesn't feel quite as nice out on the road, but has absolutely excellent handling performance, especially if you get this X5 with the dynamic rear axle. The dynamic rear axle is a torque vectoring unit, and it can send nearly 100% of the power to one outside wheel. So when we're going around a corner like this, if we're power off in a very neutral situation, then the very good weight balance in the BMW X5 comes into play. And it's really obvious this is a well-balanced SUV because it doesn't really feel like it's plowing into the corners. But if we enter a corner like this and then we power into the corner, then the car is actually going to send more power to that outside rear wheel, giving the car a very stable and very sure-footed feeling. It really helps you drive this X5 an awful lot faster out on these winding mountain roads than you could without that axle. In fact, it makes the X5 feel considerably lighter, which is a good thing because the X5 is just about a cupcake shy of 5,000 pounds. It's a pretty heavy SUV. Performance is excellent regardless of which engine you get under the hood of your X5. 0 to 60 numbers run from 6.9 seconds for the diesel model, which is a very good number for a diesel, to 6.3 seconds 0 to 60 as tested in this model right here, which again is the 3-liter single-turbo gasoline engine, to just under 5 seconds for the twin-turbo V8 engine. That under 5-second number for that twin-turbo V8 is a very, very impressive number because, again, this is a relatively heavy SUV. The handling and performance abilities of this SUV are helped out by this ZF 8-speed automatic, which seems to always have the right gear ratio for you. This is exactly the same 8-speed automatic that Range Rover uses in their Range Rover Sport, and again, it has exactly the same behavior in that Range Rover. It always feels like it has the right gear for you. When it comes to the competition, the Range Rover Sport can be had with a 340 horsepower V6 engine or a 510 horsepower V8, and it performs very, very well when you compare it to this BMW X5 in terms of performance. Now, you may recall that Land Rover was making a big deal out of reducing the weight in the Range Rover Sport for this generation, and it definitely has gone down a significant amount compared to the last generation of that same Range Rover Sport. However, this X5 is actually lighter in certain configurations than that Range Rover, and that really just goes to show that BMW has always been a relatively light entry in this segment, even though this is still a fairly heavy SUV. If you're transitioning out of a previous generation X5 into this generation X5, then it may disappoint you just a little bit. And that's because with this generation, BMW is trying to give the average shopper more of what they really want. A better ride, a more composed ride, less abrupt handling over broken pavement, that sort of thing. And in this process, BMW has given up a little bit of that classic BMW spunk. This definitely feels heavier than the last generation of BMW, definitely doesn't feel quite as aggressive out on the road, doesn't feel quite as connected to the driver, it doesn't seem to handle quite as well as that outgoing X5. It does, however, feel more luxurious, more polished, and more comfortable out on the road. Now that we're on a fairly straight section of roadway, it's a good time to talk about fuel economy as well as Eco Pro. Eco Pro is a mode that you're seeing in most BMWs sold in America. It's activated by a little button right here on the center console, and it helps the car enable all the different fuel savings technologies that BMW has to offer. In addition to changing the way the transmission shifts as well as dulling the throttle response, Eco Pro also involves the climate control in the car, and it tells the car to not cool the cabin quite as much as it would otherwise. The system is also combined with efficient dynamics, which can decouple the alternator from the car in certain situations to try and save on fuel economy. It will then recouple the alternator when you're slowing down to try and regenerate power back into the battery. This isn't a hybrid system, it's not even really a mild hybrid system. You might call it more of a micro-hybrid system, because the car still uses a traditional lead-acid battery. It's just that it will discharge and charge that battery across a wider range than most vehicles out there. Lastly, Eco Pro allows this transmission to go in what they call coasting mode. Coasting mode is basically neutral for this transmission. So if you're going over 35 miles an hour but under about 100 miles an hour and you let your foot off the gas, the transmission basically shifts to neutral. That way you don't slow down as quickly as if the car had remained in gear. This does save a little bit of fuel economy out on the highway, but it does result in a slightly peculiar feeling. I think that most people will adjust to this, but I have heard a number of drivers complain about the way that it feels, because it does take the car a little bit of time to reconnect the transmission. So if you're out on the highway and you're going 65 miles an hour and you let your foot off the gas, transmission will shift into neutral. If you then put your foot back on the gas, it does take a little bit of time for the car to get back into gear before you can accelerate again. Personally, I think that's a decent trade for improved fuel economy. According to the car, all the combination of tricks up Eco Pro's sleeve has caused me to save about 9 miles of travel over 1 tank of gas in the X5. Based on my average fuel economy during my week with the X5 of 18.9 miles per gallon, that's about half a gallon of savings per fill-up. I think that's definitely worth the difference in feel. BMW has made a significant improvement in cabin noise in this generation of X5. We scored 66 decibels in this car, which is the lowest score ever on Alex on Autos. Keep in mind that we do have the dynamic suspension in this particular model, and that does affect the noise score, because road noise was a problem and suspension noise was a problem for that previous generation X5. If you put this car in Sport Plus, it raises the score by about 2 decibels to 68 decibels, which is still very quiet. As we've come to expect from BMW, braking is excellent in this vehicle. These brakes are very fade resistant, and the stopping distance on this X5 is relatively short, even though this is a fairly heavy SUV. It's because of the size of the brakes as well as the size of the tires in this car. We have very wide tires, front and rear in the X5, which really helps the handling as well as the braking ability of this car. Part of the reason I wasn't talking much about the near luxury competition is because of the price of the X5. For 2014, it starts at $52,800. If you get crazy with the options on a 3-liter gasoline engine, you can get up to $85,925. The diesel starts at $56,600, and if you get a completely fully loaded V8 version, then you'll end up at $97,075. The price tag on our tester here is $68,675, and in case you're wondering, this is carbon black metallic. It's not actually a blue paint job, although it does have kind of an attractive blue shine to it that I liked. My preferred equipment level on the X5 would end up at $72,850. I would buy this 3-liter version right here with the all-wheel drive. I would also get the LED lights, the Napa leather interior, the luxury line trim, the multi-contour seats, the luxury seating package, the self-parking system, dynamic suspension, the 3rd-row seat with the air suspension. I'd also get the Harman Kardon sound system. I think that the up-level Bang & Olufsen sound system sounds great, but I just don't think it's worth the extra cash, so I would just stick with the Harman Kardon sound system. I'd also get the driver assistant package with the full range radar cruise control that's full stop, heads-up display, lane departure warning, blind spot monitoring, etc., as well as the pre-collision system that will automatically brake you from 37 miles per hour. All told, all those features together end up at $72,850. If that price tag sounds a little scary to you, you do need to keep in mind that BMW is a luxury brand and they do charge luxury brand prices. Now the Audi Q7 is going to be a little bit less expensive. It's about $10,000 less similarly equipped versus this BMW X5. Now that Audi is also a decent amount heavier and it doesn't perform quite like this X5, so you do take a little bit of a penalty right there. However, in a strange sort of way, the X5 represents a decent value because this is about $10,000 less than a Range Rover Sport or a Mercedes-Benz GL similarly equipped. While some of the cost difference between the X5 and the Range Rover Sport as well as the Mercedes GL can be defined as brand image, the GL is a decent amount bigger than the X5, and the Range Rover Sport has a wider variety of luxury and customization options that you just can't get in the X5. You get a wider variety of leather options, interior choices, you can choose from a much broader palette of leather hides, etc. You don't get a standard model with fake leather like you do in the X5. Everything in that Range Rover Sport is real leather. You can choose from a wider variety of headliners, seat types, etc. That kind of customization you just won't find on the X5, but it does cost you in that Range Rover Sport. The Audi is getting a little bit old and it's just not as dynamic as this X5. Part of that has to do with the weight balance and having that engine almost entirely in front of the front axle. But the Q7 is also a decent amount heavier all the way around than the X5, and that really does decrease the performance in that Audi. While this may sound strange, this really means that for me, the X5 is one of the best values in this segment. If you could really call a luxury car a value alternative, that would apply to the BMW X5, because when you compare it to the Mercedes-Benz or the Audi or the Range Rover alternatives, this really does very well for itself. Even when you compare it to the Infiniti QX80, it still represents a decent value, although that QX80 is probably the best value in the segment overall. This X5 is probably number 2. Thanks for taking the time to watch this video. Again, I'm Alex Dykes, and this has been the 2014 BMW X5. If you want to know more about the X5's infotainment system, BMW iDrive, or about how well child seats fit in the back of the X5, then you'll find those links at the end of this video. Go ahead and click that subscribe banner at the bottom of your screen so you can be updated on all of my latest videos, and I'll see you next week.